Hello everybody. Today I decided that I'm going to make a Game Boy cartridge. I am going to make Pokemon Brown, which is a Pokemon Red ROM hack, which uses the MBC3 mapper. Pokemon Brown is a game that I have been looking at playing for a long time. And this month in my Discord server, we're doing a group play of Pokemon Brown. So instead of just putting it on my EverDrive, I decided I want to make a standalone cartridge to play it on. Again, this is something that I've been meaning to do for a while. Figured might as well do it now. And I figured since I gotta make a cartridge for it, I might as well record myself doing it, because that's not something I've really done before. The last video I made was the multi-cart video, which is like, I think over a year at this point, which is really weird. Maybe it was less than a year, but still, like, it was a while ago. So I'm just gonna do this mostly unscripted. I kind of already did a take of this before, but I made an MBC5 cartridge instead of an MBC3 cartridge, and then realized that I made the wrong kind of cartridge. So I'm just gonna do it all over again, with the correct cartridge type this time. So again, this is an MBC3 cartridge for a Pokemon Red hack. It does not have a real-time clock in it, so this will be an MBC3 cartridge that does not have a clock. Pokemon Gold and Silver and Crystal have the real-time clock, but this one will not have that. So we won't need all these parts. This is the Type A cartridges. I call them Type A cartridges just to make them easier to differentiate between the different memory types. Type B cartridge uses old stock parts, or sometimes new old stock memory chips. The Type A cartridges uses the 29F160 ROM chips, which are, at the time of recording anyway, new from Mouser or DigiKey or other online stores. Hopefully it stays that way for a while. We'll see. But they're brand new parts, so they're a lot less flaky to deal with. So I'm going to be making a cartridge with those chips. And at the same time as I'm recording this, I'm going to be referring to my repository on GitHub for the MBC3 cartridges, because I did not just make those for other people to follow. I made them so I could follow them too, because it's a lot of information to remember. So I will be referencing that every so often. So to get started here, for an MBC3 cartridge without the real-time clock, we're going to need the ROM chip, the MBC3. I also have a donor cartridge. Oh yeah, so the MBC3 cartridge I have as the donor is a Pokemon Gold, a Japanese Pokemon Gold that I got for like a few dollars. So this is the chip we're going to take. We're also going to take this battery management chip out to use in our cartridge, just so we can save a few more parts. So yeah, so we'll need the U4 right in the middle. We'll need the RAM. And then we'll need some capacitors. So I think it'll be C1, C5, C6, C7, C4, and then we will need R1 to connect the battery to the rest of the cartridge. I think all the other parts we don't need. And I'll have to double check which pads I need to solder. Oh, so on this board there is the MBC3 revision solder pads. So let's see. Let's see if you can see that. Can you see that revision? Yeah. So that's the MBC3A, right? Yeah. So for that, I think, let me check the repository. Yeah, so I don't need Q1 for this cartridge. So, all right, let's just get started. I'll check as I go. So for the RAM, I already have one picked out here. This is the AS6C62256 RAM chip. And then I have all of my other stuff. I got this giant box of parts. So I need a ROM chip, which hopefully I have some in that box. And then everything else is just resistors and capacitors, which I have in this box here. Sorry, my setup's not really made for this. These are all the parts. So I'm recording this with just a webcam that's kind of like mounted facing down onto my bench, and there's not a lot of clearance there, so we'll just have to deal with it. I don't really have like a stream setup. I don't stream things. I don't make a lot of videos, so this is the best I could do with the limited tools I have. So there's the ROM chip. Let's see. Okay, so that's going to go there. I'm going to be making this cartridge with this hot plate and some solder paste. Okay, so for the capacitors, it is mostly 0.1 microfarad caps. So let's see, I need 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'll need 4. Sometimes they stick the tweezers and make it annoying to get out of here. All right, so there's 4 0.1 microfarads, and then I need a 10 microfarad cap for, I believe, C6 or C7, one of the two, and then a 10K resistor for R1. And I think that's, let's double check here. So on the repository, I have a list of parts depending on the cartridge you're making. So this is a safe cart with U4, so I need the battery still. I'll do that later. Not using real-time clock. Okay. I think that's everything. Cool. All right, so let's put some solder paste down. So I'm just freehanding this. I don't have a stencil for these boards to put on solder paste in a more controlled manner. But doing it manually gets the job done. I will be going over all of this. You can kind of see how it's blobbing up here. I'll be going over all of this with a soldering iron after I'm done to clean up all the solder bridges that I'm going to get. Because this is kind of an imprecise way of doing it, but again, it gets the job done if you know what you're doing. So yeah, that's gonna be a lot of solder to clean up, but that's fine. The solder paste is coming out faster than I expected it. The RAM's easy to fill in. And an MBC chip. Now there's pads underneath U4, and the solder pads here, that's for if you are not using U4, and so I made it that way so that you can't accidentally bridge them. If you have U4, then you're not supposed to bridge those pads. So I put those there so you can't do that. And then we'll need to short, I think we'll need to short Z1. I'll have to double check. But that's to disable the real-time clock on the MBC3 chip. Oh, and the other thing I need to do to be a good boy, I'm going to put some Kapton tape down on the cart edge pins. Because we don't want to get any solder on the pins. Because that ruins the any of the lead from the solder if you get it on these cart edge pins. I should have done this before I put paste down. You don't want to get any lead in your cartridge connector on any console, because that'll ruin the longevity of it. It'll gunk up your connector. I've seen some websites in the past, or probably like Reddit posts or something, honestly, but some posts will claim if you've got an old cartridge, just flow some solder on the cart edge pins, and it'll make better contact in your console. Don't ever do that. You don't want to get any solder on those edge pins, because it can leach into the connector and then ruin your other cartridges. So anytime you see that advice, that is bad advice. Do not follow it. So that's why we tape it off. Ugh, this is sticking. That's why we tape off those connectors, or the connections, because you don't want to get any solder accidentally stuck to it. Okay, now either C6 or C7 is the 10 microfarad cap. It doesn't matter which one, really. I think I have some flux stuck on my tweezers that's making these parts stick. Okay. And then this one goes here. Come on. There we go. And then the RAM goes here. And now I need the mapper and U4. So I will get the donor cartridge. All right, there it is. And now before I put this on the hot plate, I'm going to start the hot plate up to get it warmed up. But before I do that, I should take off the battery just to be safe. You don't want to heat up the battery unnecessarily. Okay. Oop. Yeah, sorry. Low clearance on this setup. So I'm just gonna melt the solder here. I guess my iron's still heating up. There we go. This battery looks like it's been replaced. I wonder if whoever had this before replaced the battery. Okay. So that's off. Now let's get the MBC3 and the this is the MM1134 battery management IC. And so I said this in the other video, and I might be duplicating information from the old video, the previous video, but that's fine. But I know I mentioned in the other video that when you heat these parts up to take them off, you want to make sure that all of the solder joints are molten before you take off the part. So you want to kind of nudge it just to make sure it's going to come off easily. And then once you make sure you can, then you can lift it off. And the reason for that is if you do this and say like some of your connections are still not all the way melted, and you try to take the chip off, then the legs can kind of stick to the pads that are not melted all the way yet, and then bend them, and then it'll be kind of a pain to get to sit flat on your new board. So you want to make sure it comes off with very little effort. So we'll put this chip here, and then the MBC3, we're going to line up the dot. Okay. Oh, I forgot to turn on my fume extractor, so I'm going to do that now. As I put the board on the hot plate. You always want to have a fume extractor, not a fan. You want to have it get all of the solder fumes, all the fumes coming from the solder into the filter in your fume extractor, because you don't want to breathe that stuff in. So if you had a fan, it's just going to blow it around the room, and you'll still get it in your lungs, and that's not good. Contrary to probably popular belief, that's not lead fumes coming off. It's fumes from like the flux in the solder itself. So, but it's still not good for you. And you can kind of see, I see some bridges already. I don't know how good the resolution is on this video, but I'm gonna have to go back and clean that up, which is not a big deal. Just something I got to deal with. Also, you'll notice that I have gloves on. This is for a few reasons, but important right now is that the board is getting a little toasty. I can kind of feel it getting hotter, but it's basically letting me guide the board around without having to burn myself. The other reason that I wear gloves while doing projects is that I usually will go consult something on my computer, or like type something on Discord or something like that, and if I have gloves on, I can just take the gloves off and not have to worry about any lead on my fingers from the solder, or any flux or anything like that. So it's really easy to just take them off and go type, because you don't want to have lead all over your stuff. Even non-leaded solder, you don't want to have that stuff. My headphones just shut off because I haven't been listening to anything, so I just had to turn them back on. Alright. So anyway, you don't want to have all that residue all over your keyboard and stuff like that, because it's not good for you. So you can see that's a lot of bridges on the MBC3 especially, but I expected that. Alright, so we're done with the hot plate, and now I'm going to take some flux from this giant flux tube that I bought, And I'm just going to put some down on all of the bridges I want to clean up. I don't see any bridges on the bottom of this ROM chip, but I'm still going to go over it. And this RAM looks mostly good too, but it doesn't hurt to touch up. And this is the part where being good at drag soldering is really handy. You really just gotta practice and get good at it. And honestly, these cartridges are pretty good practice. I got pretty good with drag soldering by doing cartridges and the fine pitch soldering. Alright, so let's see here. I'm just gonna go through here. Sorry if my head clips in the frame sometimes. It's kind of hard to see with this setup, but it should be okay. So I'm just gonna drag my soldering iron across the pins slowly, and then you can do kind of a sweeping motion to try to pull some of the solder off into a better like solder joint, a fillet on the outside. And then you want to like clean off your tip every so often to make it easier. If you can see solder blobs, your first instinct might be to get out the solder wick and try to like suck it up. But usually you don't need to do that. You can just move the solder around with your soldering iron to other pins to distribute it evenly, and then you don't got to worry about the solder wick. I don't even use solder wick for much of anything anymore. The only thing I really use it for is if I'm taking through-hole parts out, like headphone jacks or cartridge connectors on a Game Boys or something, where I have to like get rid of some of the solder to get it out of the holes, to get the throw parts out of the holes. And even then, sometimes you don't even need the solder wick for that either. You can just put some low melt solder on it and then just kind of pull it out. But anyway, you can kind of see, like, if you just move your iron around and distribute the solder more onto other pins, usually it's enough to get rid of the solder bridges. And the solder gets, the solder goes onto your tip as well, so even just cleaning your tip a few times while you're drag soldering, you can clean it up pretty nicely. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. Let's just go over this real quick. Not gonna take much. These wide set pins are a lot nicer. While I'm here, I might as well just bridge this middle pad to the side that says Rev A/B, since this is a Revision A MBC3 chip. In reality, it probably doesn't make a difference. If you have a no rev MBC3 chip, it's really just there for edge cases. Because when I was going through the cartridges, the MBC3 cartridges, and looking at the different designs, I was mostly using Gekio's website, the or the Game Boy Hardware Database website. I was looking at all the different board designs, and I noticed that all of the boards that are on there that have an MBC3 cartridge or an MBC3 mapper that is a no revision model, so it'll say MBC3 and it won't say MBC3A or MBC3B. It was a no revision model. They all had this extra MOSFET on it, and I think I got 1 or 2 cartridges like that, and I like traced it out and figured out where it was. But I noticed that the MBC3A and MBC3B cartridges don't have that MOSFET. And even though it works, like if you do the design without that FET with an original MBC3 chip, it still works. But there's got to be a reason they put that FET there in the first place. So on my designs, I just have it as an option. It's only like a 10-cent cart anyway, so it's not even that big of a deal to include it. Anyway, that was a lot of backstory for probably no one. I don't think anyone really cares, but I care, and that's all that matters to me. Okay, so these pads here set the RAM size. This is a 256K RAM game. So I soldered the middle pad to the right on the top and the bottom set of pads there to set the RAM size. And now also I have to check which part I think it is. Okay, if your game does not use the RTC function, then you need to bridge the pads of Z1. Okay, so Z1 needs to be shortened. So we're just going to put some solder blob here, try to get it connected. There we go. Alright. I think that's everything. So let's turn this off. Hopefully that fan wasn't too loud. If you could hear me. Okay, so now I'm going to clean up all the extra flux on here. So I'm going to use this isopropyl alcohol. This is 99%. You can get lower percentages, I think, at drugstores. I don't think I've ever seen 99% available in a store. I think I got this bottle from Mauser or DigiKey probably. And then, so I have the IPA. I'm also going to be using these nail polish remover pads. I got like a pack of, I've got more packs in my drawer, but they're really helpful for cleaning up flux. I used to use Q-tips to do this, and Q-tips work okay, but the problem with Q-tips is that you can get little fibers off of them, which aesthetically is annoying, but practically it's a little bit worse because the fibers can get stuck on pins on these IC packages, and if you're not careful, you can end up damaging the pins. Can kind of yank them off, which happened to me once with a Game Boy CPU. So that was great. That was a great lesson to learn. So then I moved to these nail polish remover pads, and these work great. The next step up from this would be an ultrasonic cleaner, but I've thought about it. But it's just like another thing, you know, it's just, I don't want another thing in my house. I got enough crap. This works fine. I don't make a ton of boards, so I'm just going to deal with it. I mean, they look nice. I have some at work. They're just, you know, it's just another thing to have in your house, so I don't have space for that right now. Okay, and then some of this got through the vias, so I gotta clean that up. All right, I think that's good. So now, yeah, I'll solder the battery on now, which is in my closet over here. So the battery I got here is a CR2032, which is, I think, larger than any original Game Boy game ever used. I think the largest they had were 2025s, I think. Which still gets you, with the current required by these old Game Boy games, it still gets you a decent amount of time, especially for games that didn't have a real-time clock. I mentioned earlier that real-time clock takes up a lot of power, well, relatively a lot of power. So old MBC3 games with a real-time clock, like Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal, the saves probably only lasted like 10 or 15 years. But if you don't have a clock, on MBC3 and especially MBC5 is pretty power efficient. You can get games that last for decades. I still get donor cartridges that have save files on them, original save files. So all that is to say, and those didn't use these CR2032s. The 2032s is the biggest that'll fit in a Game Boy cartridge. So with these, I have estimates in my repository, but it's, 30 to 50 years theoretically. It's probably not going to be that long because of like different variations in like storage temperature and self-discharge and stuff like that. But bottom line is, my kids will be about my age before they have to worry about replacing the batteries in these things. So, okay, and now I want to measure the current coming from the battery that's powering the RAM and the MBC3 to make sure it's the right value, to make sure it's not sucking up too much current. But before we do that, I need to power it on first. And the reason for that is kind of technical. Long story short, the battery management system right now is only being powered by the battery itself. So it's kind of in a, it hasn't been turned on all the way yet, I guess, is a good way of putting it. So we just need to start it up once. So obviously I don't have a game program to this, so no game's gonna load, but now that we've turned it on, it should be in a correct operating state. So I'm going to use my multimeter, which you can't see, so you'll have to trust me. I have it mounted to the wall, so I don't feel like taking it off to show the video. But if you measure the voltage across TP2 and TP3, you should be measuring a few millivolts, which I am, which means it's good. So, great. Yeah. So I guess what I'll do now, I'll put it back in the shell, and then I'll use my GBX cart to program the ROM hack, which I will do in just a second. So maybe I'll splice in some video footage of this.
And here's the spliced in video footage of this. So to prepare the ROM, first I dumped my Pokemon Red cartridge to get the ROM file, saved that on my computer, and then this is a website that pops up when you download the ROM hack and open the index.html file. I tried it in Firefox, it didn't work, so I had to open Chrome for the first time in a long time to do this. So this is what the page looks like. I already have the ROM loaded up here. You basically just find the ROM file using this button, and then find the patch file using this button. It's a .ups file, the patch. Then when you click Apply Patch, it'll show up in your Downloads folder, wherever your downloads are saved from your browser. And that's the patched ROM that you can then use with your GBX cart. So this is Flash GBX. It's software that's made by someone named Lesser Kuma. Yeah, I think it's Lesser Kuma. And it makes it really easy to program with the GBX cart. So I have the cartridge plugged in here. You can see it's empty. So when I go to Write ROM, it's going to analyze the cartridge. It's going to automatically pop up with the details. I guess it's not showing up on the capture, but it's 2 MIB cart, like megabytes basically, without getting too pedantic about it. Usually shows up as an Inside Gadgets type cartridge. Then it'll open up a file system to find the ROM you want to flash to it. So you open that, and then it'll go ahead and program it. Usually takes a while. So I will probably skip over this part. I feel like I dealt with that transition in the other video a lot better than I did in this one, but you know what? I don't care. So it looks like everything programmed correctly. Yep, written and verified successfully. Took about a minute and a half. So you can see all the information here. So it looks like our cartridge is fully flashed.
All right, so we have the cartridge here, just in a temporary shell. I might eventually make a full cartridge for this, but this will do for now. So let's turn it on, check it out, make sure it works. All right, the first hurdle has been passed, it booted up. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is to basically just check. I'm gonna make a save file and make sure it saves, and that'll tell us that we did everything correctly. Let's just name our character here. All right. So just go here, save, and we're gonna shut the game off, and we're gonna let it sit for a second, just to let everything, all the caps discharge and everything, do a clean power cycle. And if we can see the save data, then we know we did it right. All right, still there. All right, so it looks good. You're probably gonna start playing this tonight. So yeah, so that's a MBC3 game with no real-time clock. Pokemon Brown ROM hack. Pretty standard video, you know, pretty standard process. I'll leave links to everything I used and the repository and all the resources in the description. So yeah, I think this went pretty well. Maybe I'll make some more of these in the future. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching.